welcome back onto the program. It's still the conversation here on Lagos Television. Today, we're taking a look at a topic that once in a while we should give attention to, and that is autism. The spectrum disorder. A lot of people oftentimes when they hear this word, they're not very familiar or they're not sure of what exactly it is you're talking about, or many do not even know what to look out for as parents when you have a child. And so today, hopefully, we'll be able to inform and educate your viewers on what this is all about. And joining us today in the studio is Dotun Akande. She's the founder, Patrick Speech and Language Centre. Thank you for being on the program today.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Yes.
So when you say autism, some people want to shudder and say, and you know how we do, it is not my portion. But then it is something that at times like this, we just need to bring to the fore so people will know what exactly is going on. It is a disorder, but then what exactly it is? Research says one in at least 100 people will get affected with this particular disorder. But when you say autism, what exactly are we talking about?
Okay, so when you say autism is an invisible disorder, so you see me, you might not be able to tell that I'm on the spectrum. And it affects individuals in 3 major areas, but now a 4th one has been added to it. So the first that you will notice is my child is not speaking. So the child is 2 years old and should have words, should have things like hello, bye-bye, daddy, and then there's nothing there. So that's the first sign. And the second sign is the child has an odd behavior, either pacing up and down for no apparent reason, or laughing for no apparent reason, or looking from the corner of his eyes and flapping his fingers, or affected by light. He shuts his eyes when he sees light. That is the area of behavior. There's social interaction. The child is not playing with other children. You are in a set in an environment where children are playing on the playground. The child withdraws and goes to play on his own. Yes, and then holds on to a particular object. And then somebody goes there to grab that object. The child has a meltdown. Or the child decides to leave that object and goes on to another one without even noticing that somebody actually took something out of him. And then the 4th area is sensory integration. Some of them, you touch them and they shudder at just that touch. And some of them, you put them in a place where there are staircases, and then they run their eyes through the stairs and they are just afraid to climb. So they have problems with what we call vestibular input, that is the input of balancing, or their body awareness in space, that is proprioceptive senses. So some of them have very high intensity to sound. So when they hear a sharp sound, you find them quickly covering their eyes. Yes. And then when sometimes, like I said, with the light, some of them just shut their eyes to the light and just hold on to their parents as if, they are scared of something. So it's, from the physical, you can't see anything. But everything that has to do with autism is behavioral. Yes.
Okay. Is the disorder pattern the same way in every child, or there are different types of disorder that one should look out for? And I just want to know, is it only common with children?
It starts from childhood. So that is why it's called a spectrum. So there could be somebody on the lower end of it, and then there are those on the high functioning end of it. Those on the high functioning end of it are the ones that can mask their behavior. So you can tell that something is not quite right with this individual, but the individual is speaking. The individual is most of the time not socializing. So you tend to say that the person is quiet or the person is an introvert. And then they have this odd behavior that some of them, they continuously go and wash their hands secretly and then they come back. They wash their hands secretly. So you see a little bit of obsessive compulsive disorder in its OCD. So you see that also in some of the individuals that have become adults because they were missed. So now when we say that, we look at the prevalence. When we started in Patrick's, it was 1 in 150. Today is 1 in 34.
Wow.
So there is something out there that is that we still have not pinpointed, that we have not put our finger on to say, okay, this is the reason why this is happening.
Right. So you did say that, of course, it starts from childhood. So for parents, is 2 the appropriate age to start watching out for some of these spectrum, or should you start earlier than that? Because again, some mothers start getting worried at 18 months. Oh, my child is not talking. Oh, my child is not blabbing.
Yeah.
So can we put an age range to when you should start watching out?
Okay, you should start watching out from when your child is very young. From 6 months, start watching out. The child doesn't have eye contact. I mean, you come home or you see the child in the court and you say hello, and the child is looking in either direction but your eyes. So when you start seeing that your child is not there, it's there, but it's definitely not there. So that is one thing you should look out for when the child is from 6 months onwards. But you cannot get a diagnosis until the child is 2. The reason could be that the child is just developmentally late. The child is just not talking. That is why in the DSM-5, that is the Diagnostic Statistics Manual 5, it must be from those 4 major areas in the area of communication, social skills, behavior, and sensory dysfunction. So if you have those 4 areas, then you would say it's autism. Some children are just delayed. Some children just don't talk early. Right. So you can't say that, because the child is not speaking, it means that the child is on the spectrum. I mean, we're joking about it today that many people are now saying autism as something that is very interesting to have, and they say, I have autism. like you want to be societal about it. Exactly. Yeah, like you're acquiring it. So the child must have those 4 must have something in those 4 areas before you can diagnose, and it must be diagnosed by a pediatrician, speech and language therapy, a psychologist. We cannot diagnose. Okay. What we will do is to intervene at the point of diagnosis. But it must be properly diagnosed. Which is also one of the reasons why a lot of people also do not pick this early enough, because some also think, because we are cultural, some could also say, it's a village factor. Oh, yeah. And so it's going to pass out or something. So they also delay in seeking help. Yeah. And then sometimes it could also go beyond board before. But is there any situation before, after 2, if not properly diagnosed, that, one should get worried about? Okay, yes. So, like I said, it's a spectrum. So you have those that are very low functioning. That means they are dependent on a lot of, on others, not only their parents, their caregivers, for all the things that they need to do. Is it putting on their clothes? Is it eating? Is it bathing? Everything that has to do with functional skills. They are totally dependent on others. And then those on the high functioning end that can function, but would have challenges with speaking. They may not talk much. They may just, hello, and that's it. So you would know that something is not quite right, but you would not be able to pick exactly what it is. So for when you see that cadre, that amount of disparity, because when you've seen one child with autism, you've seen just that one child. You cannot use the intervention that you have created, a general intervention for all of them. Okay. You must. That is why we say it is behavioral. And you have to focus on each child. And it's observational. There's no blood test that can tell you that the child has it. It's purely observational. And it's purely at the discretion of those that have the skills to be able to determine if that child is on the spectrum. So when we are looking at the child from the age of 2, it's very good time. Early intervention, perfect. We start early. We start to move 2, 3, 4, 5. By the time you start getting to the age of 7, you see that the child has already been set in his ways and is not looking at how the intervention is coming in. And, it's more difficult for you to intervene at that point. But there is never a time that you cannot intervene. Okay, we've seen people in their 20s that have come and they have gained very significant milestones and great strides at a very short period of time. And that's because they simply could not afford therapy to start with. And then at the point of intervention, probably they went to the wrong person. And then finally they get to a place of the right intervention, and then they just move very quickly, towards progress. Yes. And also, I want to put something out there. The gut, we now know that our gut is directly linked to our brain. So what we feed those children also matters. Yes.
So aside from what we feed them, what are the other factors that are responsible for it? And from what you have narrated now, does that imply that it's very curable?
So what is, you can't cure it, but you can manage it to a point of non-recognition.
Really?
Yes. So I'll give you an example. a child, I'll give you my own example. My child didn't speak till he was 5. I mean, he was struggling with communication. I was worried. I didn't know what it was. And when we decided to start intervention, we started at 2.5, between 2.5 and 3. And he didn't gain any stride till he was about 5. And from 5 till he finished primary school, the stride was very, not fast. It was quite slow. It was crawling up till the time he finished primary school. And then when he got to secondary school, he picked up a little bit. Because what happens is that the children learn from patterns. Yeah. When they see patterns, they excel. When they see things that don't change, sometimes they're able to absorb it easily. So they will do well in things like maths, ICT, languages. Sometimes that is very contradictory. The child is not speaking, but doing well. In many languages, doing well in language because language doesn't change. And when he was telling me, he said, "There's a pattern in language." I can't see the pattern in language.
You can see,
and he could see the pattern in language. So and then when he got to year 9, that was the turning point. He went from an average student to an A student because he had the opportunity to pick his subjects. He had to remove things like English, things like literature, history that would require him to be conversational and to use comprehension. So when he got there, he had all A's. And then when asked him, "What do you want to study?" He said, "I want to study mathematics."
Wow.
He went to do mathematics. He did mathematics. He made the first class in mathematics. He just finished his PhD in mathematics. Wow. That tells you that it is not a death sentence. And it's not only him. Right. And I would say that here, clearly, it's not the only one. We've seen families that have come through the center that started with 0 speech, and the children are doing very well. We have one that the boy speaks 3 languages now. Wow. So and there are some that have been with us for 5 years, and we have not seen any improvement.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all.
Yes, it's individualized.
Okay, what about those factors that are responsible for it?
Okay, so we're looking at sometimes genetics. We are looking at, because sometimes we have 2, 3, 4 families having children on the spectrum. So sisters, they have children on the spectrum. A family has about 2 or 3 children on the spectrum. And then we're also looking at the environmental factors. We cannot remove that from what is going on because many of them come with gut issues. Their biology is wrong. You find that some of them cannot tolerate certain foods. So we say take out casein, which is milk, dairy. Take out gluten, which is flour. Take out sugar, from their diet. When you repair some of the gut issues that these children have, it's like you've just struck a match and then the candle comes right up. That's exactly what it's like. So we know that the gut is directly linked to our brain through the vagus nerve. And if we're able to repair that connection, that message that the gut splits into the neurological part of our body, we see a clear improvement in our children. So pesticides is also something we must run away from, which was, like we can see now, we have so many more diseases coming on with different pesticides. That's why everybody's running to Africa to see organic food. But we are also getting GMOs now. So it's a bit difficult to really say what really is organic. But we always encourage, please try to avoid giving our children anything that does not grow in the ground or on the trees. Try to avoid anything that has a shelf life, because that way we have compromised some of their gut issues. Yes.
From what you've painted now, it looks like, again, funding will be a big issue here. So for people who are on the other side, who, funding is a problem for them, do you think they would even want to go an extra mile to even get a diagnosis with their children?
Before we even talk about funding, let's look at stigma. Many people will say, what would my neighbors say? I remember when I came out to say my son had autism, there were people that pulled me aside and said, in Yoruba, and I smiled and I said, so it cannot be that it's just this, my only son, in the whole of Nigeria that is on the spectrum. I will see it. Because I can't believe a child that doesn't speak and is doing well in Yoruba. I couldn't explain it. So stigma is something we need to rise above. Then we now look at funding. Many parents can't afford services. It's not a walk in the park.
Right.
It's not cheap at all. And we are encouraging parents to go and learn how to manage their children. I learned how to manage my child during my own time. I taught him how to brush his teeth, how to brush his hair. Everything that was easy for my other child, the sister that was ahead of him, was difficult for him. We taught him every single thing. Before he could learn how to brush his teeth, it took us 3 years. So parents need to come in. Yes, it's tough. We at Patrick's, we have a platform on WhatsApp that we invite parents, come, tell us what your problem is. We will help you. Because that's the only way we can reach everybody. Not everybody can come to Patrick's.
Right.
But through that medium, we can reach thousands of parents. We have parents from all over the world, even those that are abroad.
Right.
They come on there. And why do they come on there? Because we have a specialist that comes onto that platform every blessed day.
Okay, to talk about the spectrum.
To talk about it. What are your problems? We'll give a topic, then we ask, what are your problems? And the beautiful thing about it is now is that the parents are now interacting with one another.
So
I did this, yes, this didn't work. I tried this, it didn't work. And then so sometimes we move back and allow the parents to banter. That way, we can hold one another's hands. So they say, please, quickly, help me add my friend to this platform. Please help me add my friend to this platform. Because as a community, if you have a shoulder to lay on, it's easier.
Right.
Because the road of autism is not a walk in the park. It's a very lonely road.
So that's to tell us that those who think that autism is disability, they are not right.
Yeah, it is a disability, or you can call it a disorder, but it is not a death sentence. Just like every other thing. The person that is physically challenged, it's not a death sentence. There are things that you can do to make that individual functional in his own space. 3 things must be done before you can get a child with autism to start to emerge. The first thing is acceptance.
Right.
If you don't accept that this thing is there, that child will not be able to trust you.
Right.
Secondly, the environment. It must be loving. It must be caring. It must be accepting. You must believe that this child will do well. Then, the environmental part. The intervention you are going to expose that child to matters. If you give that child to the wrong person, it's going to change the trajectory of that child for life. So you must know that the person that is handling your child is a specialist, and the person has the interest and believes. Because we have specialists that don't believe. That believes.
That rubs off.
Yeah, that rubs off.
Child.
We've had a case where one of the people that was working with us said, let's just manage it. I said, we cannot manage it.
We have to get it right.
We have to get it right. We have to walk this road. And years later, the guy came back to me and said, Madam, I just thank you for how you changed the direction of how I view things. I said, because I'm coming from a place of a parent.
Right.
I have seen it happen, and I know it's possible with our children. So there is nothing that we cannot do. All we need to do is understand that child and allow that child to trust us. If the child doesn't trust you, he's not going to open up. And you notice that I'm saying he.
Right.
It's because it's a boy disorder.
Oh.
Before you find a girl, you would have seen 4 boys.
Oh, so it's more in
It's
boys.
more dominant in males.
Ah.
Even though the females complain that it's because they're able to mask it very well. That's why we don't see it as much as yes. But if most of the males are non-speaking, and many of them are non-verbal till the very end. And non-verbal doesn't mean non-communicating.
Right.
It just means that you have to find a means to help that individual to communicate.
So do you have, is it possible to have a child on the spectrum be in an inclusive school?
Yes. Very, very possible. So with us, we are an exclusive school.
Okay.
So what we do is that once we see that the child is progressing, we quickly include that child we transition that child into mainstream school.
Okay.
So the child will probably do 3 days in mainstream school, 2 days with us, and then 4 days and 1 day, and then we eventually let the child go. But there are those that don't need to come to us. that can thrive in a mainstream school.
Right.
With support. But that mainstream school must be willing.
And they must understand.
They must be willing and they must train. They must stress that part. Train
Teachers.
1 or 2 teachers that understand the concepts intricately so that they can do it well.
Okay. So it's not just anybody who can
you can't just
take them on.
You can't just take
people
them
who
on.
must be trained. Okay.
Yes.
There's a question I want to ask as follow-up, but Joy has Joy, you have a question?
Yes.
Stress and emotional challenges while raising up your son, and then what advice do you have for parents who are going through this at this time?
The emotions, they run wild. I won't lie to you. They come and go. There are days that I've dialogued. I put a chair and I put God on that seat and I sat on mine and we dialogued and I said, what is going on with this? But one thing that you must take into perspective is the fact that you must have a shoulder to hold on to cry on to. You must have a support system.
Right.
Find somebody that has gone through that road before. That is why my phone is everywhere. My phone number is everywhere. Everybody knows it. I am open because I know there are times when parents just want to vent.
Right.
And you must make yourself available to do that. Not that you must, but I choose to make myself available to do that. So you must find somebody in your family setting as well that can help you with respite care, because that's the way you can distress. Please, can you stay with him for 6 hours? I just quickly want to sleep. Because our children, when they are hyperactive, when they are jumping all over the place, it's a lot of work. So you must find your support system. You must have a team of support, not even one, a team. And those are the people that will encourage you. Those are the people that you trust. Those are the people that love your child unconditionally. There was a family that was with us. The woman was separated from her husband because of the case of the son. When we are doing inter-house sports, you would think that they went to pack people from the village. Her sister, all their children, everybody comes in.
Their support system.
Give Azim the support. So there is no how Azim will not thrive. No how it wouldn't thrive. So you could see, and then the smile with all that was going on. The mother was already distressed, because she has had that support system. So she strolls in. When she comes into she doesn't come agitated and all that. So you need a very strong support system.
In addition to what Joy said, a lot of people watching you today might think, oh, you've had it all rosy. It's been such a beautiful walk. And then it's been there. And I mean, you're here talking about this today. And like you said, when you started, it was a big challenge. And of course, let's talk about how your family, your immediate family also took it at that time. Because of course, at that time, your son had an older sister.
Yes.
Who also probably at that time could have felt you were devoting all attention to him.
Yes.
How did you manage?
It was difficult. And the reason why it was difficult was because my daughter was just 2 years ahead of him. And I was working in the bank. So you can imagine what that meant. The poor girl had to manage her brother while I was away. And but one thing that stood out really strongly was that my husband was not in denial. He was supportive all the way. And he's not somebody that talks much, but you could tell from his character that he was also just as worried as I was at the time. In fact, he was the one that successfully taught our son how to brush his teeth. I couldn't handle it because I'm very up and going and doing, and I couldn't imagine that. Why would it take me so long?
The patience
to teach this boy to brushing of teeth is just like a walkover. So he just said, "Please, can you excuse us? Let us do what we have to do." He was the one that helped to do that, and that support system must not be taken for granted. For instance, before my father passed, he didn't understand my son so much. So he would say, let that boy let him move out of that place. And my son, when he was going to describe how he saw my father, when he was writing the tribute, he said the the giant. So he saw him, as somebody that was like the king that sits in his palace, It was such a funny description. Description. And I just smiled. That was how he saw him. Because he didn't quite understand him as much. Later on, when before my dad passed, he understood what I was talking about and what I was trying to do with telling the world that it is not a death sentence, that these children do well with the right side of support. And with my siblings, everybody was there. And my in-laws too were very, very supportive because we lived with them. My in-laws were living upstairs, we were living downstairs. They were the ones that would stay with the therapist when they would come, when I used to work in the bank. So it was, we had a lot, we had a village.
You had a very good support system, but for those who are watching us right now and they are facing one stigma or the other because of autism, what say you to that?
Rise above it. That's all I can say.
Is it that easy?
Yes, sometimes it is. Sometimes you just close your eyes and rise above it. But if you cannot, reach out. Find somebody that has walked that road before. It's so easy. Now, in our autism community, we have so many WhatsApp groups popping up and people coming on to say they need this right support. And if you can't find, call us at Patrick's. We will pair you with somebody that will give you that support in your environment. We'll find somebody in your location. So what we do is that we not only intervene with the children, we connect the families. So we have families that have become friends, that have become neighbors, that have become sisters, that's to the point that some parents pick some children from school to their house until the parents come back. You see, if you don't reach out, you will not be able to get the support that is needed. Don't be ashamed. That's the first thing. Don't be ashamed. Don't say, no matter. And, there's something we do every quarter. We used to do it, but because of funding, we stopped it. It's called therapy outreach. We go to the community to look for them.
Right, because some lock
for 3 days,
indoors.
Yes. And one thing one man said to us was that this is the first time somebody is asking me what is the matter with my son. And in that community, we will get that community together. We'll look for the primary health care in that community. We'll connect both of them and allow them to be able to use that facility. And if there's a need for us to intervene in the home, we will go there. We have people we send there to go and intervene, to give them the right support in that environment. So if in that community we see that there are a group of parents that we can connect, we'll connect them and we'll tell them that if you want us to come back, sometimes we do a revisit to the same community just to see the progress. Right. How is your child doing? Sometimes we reach out and it is the people in that community that we started that WhatsApp group with. Okay. Before we started getting other people that were joining in. So it's beginning to explode. We are beginning to at least get the attention.
To make more sense as it is. So learning disorder and the spectrum, do they have a connection?
Yes, because some people on the spectrum have multiple learning disorders. Okay. So that would include dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, especially in the area of dyspraxia.
And these are things that a lot of people are not familiar with in this side of the world. So awareness?
It stands alone also.
It stands alone.
So you can have somebody that is not on the spectrum, that is dyslexic. And you can have somebody that is not on the spectrum and has problem with dyscalculia or dyspraxic, or dysgraphic, which has to do with writing. A lot of people. And then there's something that research has shown us now. If the gross motor does not develop very well, the fine motor will not develop.
There's a connection.
And that is why in places like, I think it's in Finland, you don't get into school writing until you are 7.
Right.
Because they will start with the gross motor activities, the exercises, the playground, making sure you can balance your proprioceptive input. It helps the balancing of the liquid in your ear that gives you that vestibular input to be able to stand. So you see, if the gross motor is not properly developed, you find the child is having struggles with writing. And the easiest way for you to determine that is if you put the child on all fours and you run your finger from the base of the neck to the trunk of the back, and the child wriggles, you know that the gross motor is not properly developed, and you need to do more what we call motor exercises or primitive exercises to help that child get back that primitive balance that he needs to be able to use writing. So you see that it's very complex. It has a lot of biology to it.
It does. Was it your personal experience that actually made you set up the school?
Yes, it was my personal.
So you quit banking?
Yes, that made me set up the school. I said, can't be only me in this whole Nigeria.
But you needed to take the step.
And it was I sat in my restroom on that fateful day, and something said, go and open a center. And I voiced it out to my husband, and he said, okay, I'll help you write a proposal. I voiced it out to the speech therapist that was coming to her house. She said, I will help you, which she did. I voiced it out to the doctor that diagnosed him. She said, it's needed. And that was how we started the journey.
Right. As we close this conversation now, do you think that we have, are we doing great with the medical personnel needed for diagnosis, for therapy, to give this care to those that really need them?
In terms of medical, we are not doing great because many doctors still tell the parents the child will outgrow it. And that is very painful because we now get that child at 7, we get the child at 11, we get the child at 15. Very depressing. Those are one of the reasons why you will see us teary because it could have been picked at an early stage. With regards to therapists, we do not have near enough of those that need to support our families on the spectrum. That is why the little we have, you see a lot of people extorting families because the families are desperate.
All right. Thank you so much, Dotun Akande, founder, Patrick Speech and Language Center, for finding time to be here on the program.
Thank you for having me. It was a real pleasure.
Okay, that's the motto. Take care. Of course, the take-home here is you do not need to wallow in self-pity if you're faced with this condition. Seek out, reach out for help. There's so many people who are out there that can actually offer you the succor and the support that you do need. Please don't keep these children indoors. Allow them find help and develop themselves. We'll take a quick break. When the conversation returns, it'll be time for the Lagos ladies to take us through their conversation.